Okay, so today we're going to be calibrating a MESC004 unit, 120 volt, open closed jog. This is a 445 inch-pound actuator attached to an 1.25 inch stainless 3-piece ball valve. Wanted to show a couple of different things that we've got on this actuator that's a little bit different from the A003 series. Number one, you can realize it's got a taller base on it, and that's because there's a sub-transmission in the unit. The product itself has a manual override shaft instead of the one on the bottom that was on the A003 unit. The C004 has a manual override on the side, and this accepts a 5mm hex key and tells you the open and closed directions. That's for your manual override system. So another thing that you're going to recognize, the difference in this unit, is the indicator is a solid indicator on the top on one side and it's open on the other. And the reason for that is this unit is designed with this additional transmission on the bottom, changes the torque output from 310 to 445 inch-pounds, and that does a couple of things other than just increasing the torque. The reason for that additional transmission on the bottom is, number one, besides increasing torque, is it gives you the manual override capability that I just showed on the back side, that 5mm override. So one of the things that happens because of that is the drive shaft that drives the valve is in the exact center of the actuator itself. And if you look at it from the side, you'll see the output is in the exact center of the actuator while the drive shaft is offset. So that reason for that is because of that sub-transmission that's down there. Means that the output shaft of the actuator is not directly connected to the camshaft, number one. And number two, because of that, the camshaft rotates opposite of the output. So as I mentioned in an earlier calibration unit, all of our actuators run clockwise to closed when viewed from above. This unit is the same. It runs clockwise to closed, except the position indicator and the camshaft and the cams run counterclockwise to close. So this C004 unit is the only unit that operates in that manner. Just keep that in mind. Is if you're used to doing the A003s or the E series and larger, the cams, everything we're used to on this ME series product is the indicator and the actuator and the valve, everything rotates clockwise to close when viewed from above. This is the only unit that the actuator, output shaft, and the valve, they operate clockwise to close when viewed from above, but the indicator runs the opposite direction. The other thing is it's not a 1-to-1 ratio. So the output shaft runs 90 degrees for the valve, but the indicator turns 180 degrees. So it runs 2-to-1 and in the opposite direction. Very important to pay attention to the calibration instructions in the IOM on this product. So what we're going to do is we've got this connected to the valve, and the purpose of this is to show how to do the calibration of the travel cams and the auxiliary switches. So first thing we'll do is we'll go ahead and power up this actuator, and we'll drive it to the full closed position. We can see right now that the valve is kind of in almost the full open position. We'll go ahead and drive it closed, and you'll see that while the valve is driving closed, the indicator shaft is rotating counterclockwise. So you'll notice that it's driving in a counterclockwise direction. We'll wait it to go full closed. And so the actuator has driven to the end of travel cam, it's in the full closed position as far as the cam is concerned, but the valve, you can see, is somewhat still, has a small area that it's open. So it has not gone far enough to close. So in the calibration procedure, what we'll do is we're going to manually rotate the valve a little bit further closed using the manual override shaft on this unit, and it shows that we're going to rotate the override wheel clockwise to drive the valve further closed. So while I'm rotating it, I'm going to watch the ball position in the ball, and I'm going to rotate this a little bit further until I'm in the full closed position. All right, so now we've got the valve and the actuator are in the correct position for the valve to be closed. And what we're going to do is we're going to calibrate the end of travel cam. The number 2 cam, in looking at the wiring diagram, the number 2 cam is still our closed position cam. Even though it's rotating in the opposite direction, it's still the number 2 cam. So I'm going to take and rotate this, and because it runs opposite, we're going to go ahead and turn this to the right. And you'll see that, remember, when it's driving in the closed position on this actuator, this cam is rotating in this direction to stop the actuator. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go put the cam lobe on the back side of the switch so I know that it's correct, and I'm going to snug it up slightly and then pull it to the right till you hear the switch click. Right there. All right, now I'll power it up. We'll drive it open a little bit. And then I'm going to drive it closed and let it stop. And I'll check it and see that in fact the valve is in the full closed position. So now I've got the travel cam set properly. I'm going to come up here in the full closed position. I'm going to watch the monitor the auxiliary switch for the number, for the clockwise position. And I'm going to rotate this around, and it's going to come in from the back side, and we'll rotate it until we see this switch trip. So there you can see a trip, untripped, trip, almost, and then just a little bit further to the right sets it correctly. We'll go ahead and check the position of all 3 lights, as we do in all of our on-off actuators, is that we should see this unit when driving in the clockwise closed direction, moving in the closed direction. We should see this come on when we move our switch to clockwise. Then we're going to see the auxiliary switch trip, and then we're going to see the pilot switch trip. So we're driving, we should see 1, 2, 3. We'll check that again. 1, 2, 3. So the switches are set, the travel is set, the valve is in the closed position, and we are good. All right, so now let's go ahead and check the counterclockwise open valve position. We'll check and see how that works. Okay, the switch has stopped it. I'm going to go ahead and cut the power, and we can see that the valve is not fully open. It's got a little bit ways to go. So I'm going to take and rotate the manual override shaft counterclockwise to drive it a little bit further open. And that looks perfect now. It's full bore, full in the open position. So now I've got the valve set in the correct position as far as the set where it stops mechanically. And I'm going to now adjust the counterclockwise, or the open end of travel cam. Looking at the wiring diagram, that's the bottom cam. and we're going to rotate that in the opposite direction. So I'm going to clear this out, clear the switch, and I'm going to rotate this slowly until I hear the switch click. Like that. So you always want to make sure if you go past, you don't want to try and move the cam switch in the opposite direction. You always want to approach the switch from the side that it's driving from so that you're missing the cam dwell angle. So we'll set that. And we're good. We'll go ahead and check the position. We'll close it a little bit. Drive it open. And we'll check the valve, and the valve is full bore, looks perfect. Excellent. Now we'll go ahead and set the auxiliary switch cam. So this is our counterclockwise open auxiliary switch. We're going to run this just a little bit until it trips, and then just a little bit further. Now I can check the operation, move it closed a little bit, and then drive it open, and we should see this one on, and then this one, and then this one if it's set properly. 1, 2, 3. Set perfectly. We'll check it one more time. Okay, it stops, and the valve is in the full open position. We now have all 4 cams set in the proper position. The last step after the calibration, once we're past the point where we know all 4 cams are set properly, is to go ahead and drive the actuator and the valve to the full closed position. One other thing to note here, because this window indicator for this actuator only has one side, you're only seeing this small window right here. So we know the valve is in the full open position. As we run this closed, you're going to see this rotate 180 degrees over to here, and we should end up with the red closed position showing up in the window. Perfect. So now we're in the closed position. The valve is closed. All the cams are working. The switches are all working. This actuator and valve package are now fully calibrated. Power off, ready to ship. And remember, don't lick the wires.